Great. So I'm here to wrap things up, get the lights turned off, get the people in to take the chairs down, and most importantly, to explain to you what Think Big, Act Small means, because that's our theme for this symposium. It's also what I consider the important message for making change. So let's jump into this. I don't necessarily think of myself as a social entrepreneur, even though I've been accused of working in this area for almost 10 years now. And because that accusation has stuck, that I work in social enterprise, people come up to me and say, hey, I want to start a social enterprise. Can you help me? And often they're like this particular story here, a rich alumnus of the university, and they say, we've got a lot of money now, we're successful in business, we've got in this case, a luxury furniture company, and we want to give back. That's always the words, right? We want to give back. So we want to be a social enterprise. And I say, well, sounds good. What would you like to do? And they say, well, we have an idea, there's a group of us, and I've got marketing experience, and she's got some money, and he knows operations, and that guy has a website. And what we want to do is we want to find a village somewhere, and they probably make some sort of product, and we're going to help them market that product to the rest of the world. And they're going to become, better, have better livelihood because of that. And I stop for a second, and they say, what do you think? And I say, well, why not just run your business better? Why not help your employees? Why not make sure you don't pollute the environment? You've got thousands of employees. You can probably do a lot more impact just running your business better. Why not doing that? And they say, oh, no, you don't understand. We want to have a social enterprise. And I say, well, we have a difference in opinion on creating value and impact. And that's one of the problems with labels about social enterprise. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to give you a new label. All right, so that's the purpose of this discussion, is to have a new label about what I hope some of us are doing in the room. Okay, so first of all, I believe all businesses have an impact on society. Business is a social activity, okay? Society is not a business activity, although you may think that in the world we live in. But business is a social activity. All businesses have impact on society. Some of them have impact better or worse than others. And what I want to try to convince you is that social entrepreneurs, or people who start social ventures, or people who invest in social ventures as impact investors, are trying to change the way this impact occurs. Okay? Now, the reason this is important, there's all kinds of examples of things. Now, I just did this randomly. I'm not trying to make any enemies with anybody, but this happens to be an advertisement from an oil company. If you're from Thailand, you'll know the oil company. But if you're not from Thailand, I'm guessing you could say, yeah, that looks like an oil company advertisement, because all oil company advertisements tend to be like this around the world, okay? This one is a very big one. It's on the main motorway going to the airport, so it's very expensive advertising space. And the headline says, Ba Nai Grung, right? Forest in the city. Okay? Now, when I go by this, I think this is really interesting. I'm always curious about what makes humans act, including corporate humans. And I say, this is kind of interesting. This is an oil company, and they have this idea of creating a vision of a forest in the city. Now, why do they do that? I know what you're all thinking. CSR. Okay? But I think it's more important than that. I'm more optimistic than that. Because for them to even be able to do CSR, they must think there's some value in a forest in the city. And more importantly, they must think somebody else sees value in a forest in the city. Maybe investors of theirs or customers of theirs or someone else sees value of a forest in the city because they're willing to pay very, very expensive advertising space to talk about this message. So why don't they do it? They think it's valuable. They're willing to spend money on it. Why don't they do it? Well, it's very easy why they don't do it. Maybe it's not profitable enough for them. Maybe they've got other needs that they have to take care of with their shareholders. maybe it's valuable, but they don't know how to do it. Maybe they haven't figured out how to do it. They're a big company. They don't know how to innovate. Okay, there's a whole bunch of reasons they might do it. But the most important lesson here, forget the word greenwashing, the most important lesson here is they clearly believe it's valuable. So now we need to figure out what we can do with that. Well, we have these things called social enterprises, and everyone has a different definition of what social enterprise is. For some people, social enterprise is like a company that doesn't make money very well, all right? Or it takes a long time to make money. Or some people say a social enterprise is somebody who gives all their profits back to society. Some social enterprises say to investors, we're not going to give you any money back. You give us the investment money because we're doing good things, but we're not going to give any money back to you because we're a social enterprise. And so on and so forth. There's all kinds of definitions like this. But I want to give you a different definition. My view is that social entrepreneurs and the impact investors that go with them, it's a necessary relationship between the two. When it's done right, social entrepreneurs are simply finding new value for business. Not a different type of business, but they're finding new ways to find value of today's businesses. And I'll tell you, if somebody else can figure out a forest in the city in a profitable way, PTT should invest in them. Okay? I'm not saying it's easy. Change is never easy. But the point is the value is there. Now what we need is to find a way of doing it. That is a great entrepreneurial opportunity. And that's what we want to promote. So the role of social ventures is to find new forms of value for current businesses. So first thing I want to do is break down this dichotomy of business and social business. To me, they're all the same. All businesses create impact, and social entrepreneurs are finding new forms of impact that might change the way we do business. So here's why, and this is the think big, act small part. So let's start with this. Most businesses, right, this is the normal curve. This is my handwritten drawing of a normal curve. Okay, most businesses have to look at the middle of the mass market, right? The middle of the market, all those customers who roughly think the same way and roughly want the similar products. We give them some choice. They can choose between blue or green or red, but we can kind of sell them a standardized product. This is what most businesses feel like that they need to do. They need to seek a market like this in the mass market. So what do entrepreneurs do? Entrepreneurs are down there in that little corner. Okay, sometimes they're called innovators, entrepreneurs, whatever. And I happen to work in a couple of different groups of people. So when I'm in groups of people who are social entrepreneurs, we hear things like change maker, passionate, stuff like that. But if you go to another room full of technology entrepreneurs, they say the same thing. Passionate, willing to change the world with technology. The message is similar. Okay? The challenge is they work with different types of people. They're working with people who either want to try something new or need to try something new. So how do we put those two things together? We've got this mass market, and we've got this teeny tiny small group of innovators. Where's your opportunity as a social entrepreneur? Well, look at the orange letters there. Is this a disruptive innovation? Not yet. Why? Because it's still stuck down in that niche. So let me give you your role. I urge you to take on this role. This is the role. The role is to figure out the new business model, figure out that new innovation, but most importantly, scale it. Okay? Take on the challenge of scaling it. So don't be content to making the change once or for a small group, but really try to take on the next step of imagining, now that you've succeeded, how do you move it forward? Okay? So this is what we're doing, is we're taking a new form of value, but we're applying business principles to it, and that is, how do we make the message appeal to a larger group of people? How do we deliver to a larger group of people? This is standard business activities for the new form of value, whatever it is, social value, environmental value. Why? Opportunity for anybody who's in this space, $700 billion. $700 billion is the amount of money that people say, Wikipedia says anyway, impact investors are willing to invest around the world, seeking deals around the world. I can tell you personally, I get calls every week from people looking for investment opportunities. There are not enough entrepreneurs to chase the amount of money out there. So even if you look at it just from the point of view of opportunity, it's a huge opportunity for all of us. Okay, so the money is there, but what we need to do is find the form of value. So if you're a good entrepreneur, or you're willing to accept a challenge, you can look out in the world and just see nothing but opportunity. Why? It's filled with problems, it's filled with people, it's filled with a lot of money and resources. But what needs to happen is people need to bring it together in a new combination, which results in things like forests in the city, maybe. So how do we combine these in a new, valuable way? That's the question that I want to plant in any entrepreneur's head, and then figure out how to deliver that like any good business should. Let's take a look. So the story I want to leave you with is, what is this think big, act small, and why do I think it's unique? Well, first of all, we need to understand think big, act big. This is what big companies do, and they do it well. Big companies do innovate. Sometimes I get sick of hearing over and over, big companies can't innovate. Big companies innovate all the time. Okay? But they innovate more or less incrementally. Why? Because they've got a big customer base. When they make a decision, they need to do something that is good for their customer base of hundreds of thousands or millions of customers. So they make decisions in a big way. Let me give you an example. Has anybody seen this product? I'm going to show you a picture of a really, really cool product. Maybe some of you own this. If you own it, raise your hand. This is a new type of tablet. I stole this off of Gizmodo, but this website grabs all the new tech trends. But this was a couple years ago, so it's probably out in the market. So it's a folding tablet. It folds like a book. Really cool. Has all these things designed to augment your computer or whatever other devices you have. Allows you to create. It's really designed around people who create. You can write in it. You can capture all your data, handwriting, photos. Beautiful looking machine. Nice pictures, at least in the photos. Okay? They were looking at this for architects and designers and people who like to sketch and people who like to catch ideas. Anybody seen this product? I don't see any hands. Anybody own it? No? None of you own it. This was actually a Microsoft product. 2 years. Bill Gates killed it a year, but it was in development for several years before the iPad was even launched. They had 130 engineers working on the project. So it wasn't that somebody didn't see the opportunity. It wasn't that they couldn't come up with the ideas. It wasn't that they couldn't innovate. Why did Bill Gates kill such a product? Just before the iPad changed our worlds. Anybody know? It didn't run Windows, it didn't run Office. And this makes sense. You know, we laugh, but would we do any differently if we were sitting in the room, right? Our 50% or 60% of our income comes from these two products. We're used to selling B2B. We load them on the machine, the people get it with their machine whether they like it or not. That's our business model. Would we be able to say that we want this product without that? That's the challenge. Big companies think big and they act big. And they're successful at that most of the time. Let's look at the other part of the spectrum. Lots of people do valuable things. And there's nothing wrong with this either. I know all kinds of people doing incredible things around the developing world. Yes, they're thinking small, but most importantly, they're acting small. This is where they deserve credit. They're acting to change their community, and it's a great thing. And I want to encourage more of that. Community-level activism is excellent, and anybody should do it. But that's not the topic for today. The topic for today is think big, act small. So I want to show you one company to inspire you if you are a social entrepreneur or an inspiring social entrepreneur. McDonald's. Why do I have McDonald's up here? McDonald's does a brilliant job getting hamburgers all around the world. Now, we can debate all we want about whether the product is a great product or not a great product or whatever. Disclaimer, I eat it. Sometimes. Okay? But what's more interesting is, from somebody who comes from an engineering background, I think it's amazing how they create little teeny factories all over the world to make billions and billions of a very, very successful product. And of course, they put a nice story around it. They put nice imagery around it. And as much as we think it's standardized, it's actually adjusted a little bit to different local tastes around the world. What I'm saying is, if we're interested in making social change, let's take the things that are working at a small level and think a little bit more like McDonald's. We need the business challenge, the business opportunity is to take that new form of value and finding ways to distribute it, communicate it, standardize it, and grow it. And for me, this is the biggest opportunity for social innovation. Most social innovators today still get involved in their local communities, which is great, but our goal for you with something like the GSVC is social ventures, going after those scalable opportunities that will be invested in by impact investors. That's why we say, think big, act small. All right, so start with helping the person who needs you the most, and then put those good old business practices behind it and scale your business. Thank you for coming to the GSVC.